I'd like to call to order the December 12th, 2022 regular board meeting of the East Penn Board of School Directors. After we stand and say the pledge, I would like you to remain standing to have a moment of silence in honor and in remembrance of Ms. Ann Dordal, who passed away on December 1st, 2022. Mrs. Dordal served as a substitute teacher for the district since 2005, and she will be missed. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for doing that. Our next item of business is a report from the EHS Student Government Association. Tonight we have Ms. Maddie Hess with us.
Hi, thank you. So just to start off with some of our winter sports, the Emmaus Rifle Team is the defending state champ with their win over Freedom 500 to 498. So congratulations. Emmaus boys and girls swim and dive teams do have a meet tomorrow at 4 p.m. This marks their first home meet, so we're looking forward to it. Emmaus boys and girls basketball teams are doing very well this season. They both have a game tomorrow at 7 p.m., boys at home and girls at Whitehall. Now, a few congratulations to hand out. A big congratulations to Julia McDonald and Sophie Isom, who earned a spot in the NAFME All-East Band. Julie plays the bassoon, and Sophie plays the flute and piccolo. They'll be playing at the Easton School of Music from April 13th through April 16th, 2023. Continuing on the same line, congratulations to Eddie Chow, Sean Consiglia, Elena Tang, Enbo Yao, Brighton Yu, Colby Zhang, Nicholas Maroon, Isa Elcock, Vivian Zong, Julia McDonald for being some of the members that were accepted into the district orchestra. Yet again, congratulations to Sophie Isom, Clara Isom, Julia McDonald, Vivian Zong, Zach Bernhardt, and Jamie Kale for being accepted into the PMEA District 10 band. And as a very exciting announcement for our clubs, the EPSD International Fair is going to be back post-COVID for Saturday, February 25th in the high school cafeteria. Food, games, crafts, entertainment will be provided by our students as they show off their individual cultures. Students can still sign up to participate and are encouraged to do so. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hess. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay. I know you'll likely stay, but I'll tell you that if you have other things you'd like to do tonight, you're free to go.
I'll be here.
We'd love to have you here. Thank you very much. Okay, our next order is on the agenda is our request to address the board. We have many to go through tonight. As such, I'm going to be very strict with the 3-minute time limit. I will give you about 15-second heads up when your time's going to conclude. Before we begin, I'd like to read the following statement. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with public comment, speakers should feel free to express their opinion, comment, or question, and understand that this is not an interactive engagement with the board or with the administration. Please direct your comments to the chair, be respectful, not engage in profane rhetoric, and be mindful that others, including students, may be listening. I would request that you consider that protocol when making your comments. For the members of the audience, please also be respectful and refrain from speaking during the public comment period. With that, I will now announce each speaker and their topic. When you step up to the podium, again state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes within which to speak. Our first requester to address the board is Mr. Tim Keller, who's going to talk tonight about math curriculum rewrite.
Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. I'd like, as the math curriculum rewrite comes around, I'd just like you to take some thoughts into consideration. Please consider that the math curriculum has not been updated by the current administration, even though they've worked here for a long enough time to do so. That should not be acceptable. It's one of the most important aspects of developing our learners. 5 years is not due to COVID, and there's no excuse for putting this off for so long. We have classes right now currently being taught that don't have curriculum guides online. There's at least one class that does not have the correct guide of what's being taught online. I emailed personally about to ask about my daughter's 6th grade math curriculum, and I never got anything back in return about what her curriculum is. I'd like to hear if the district knows which teachers have completed their curriculums over the last 5 years. How far are students behind based on what they haven't seen? I challenge that the administrators who are supposed to be guiding these rewrites aren't looking at what the teachers are getting through and the quality with which they are testing students. Common assessment is a start, but certainly not enough. Tests need to be written to drive thinking, not just rote skills. I wonder how many board members have actually seen any math tests. Our goal is to teach them to get ready for an AP exam in a lot of classes. Those AP exams are not written as rote skills. There needs to be some consistency between what the middle schools and the high school do. The way the instruction is presented, the tests, and the technology. Has there been any push to make sure that middle school students are using TI calculators? TI 84 calculators are better. They're allowed to use those on the Keystone. Have the current administrators made sure that our students had calculators during the Algebra 1 testing for the Keystone? What % of the students had calculators? How do we ensure success when kids don't have the appropriate resources or know how to use them? Curriculum writing itself needs to be done carefully. You're asking teachers to write curriculum and tests that are based off essential questions. And teachers have not done this before, and they don't know, and they don't teach this way. Our current math curriculum is written with essential questions now, and our teachers don't incorporate them. They teach, at least from what, I have 6 kids in this district, from what I've seen. They teach content and they teach skills. I'd like to know what your plans are to make sure teachers are writing curriculum and tests designed to drive problem-solving, technology use, and build meaningful connections. How are you going to increase critical thinking, and when does that rigor start? The same learning should be mirrored in the middle schools as the high school. It's very possible to teach lessons that are designed to build critical thinking in the middle school. The earlier students begin thinking about meaning behind the problem solving, the better. The math does not need to be purely about skills. I'd also like to point out for the math curriculum rewrite that AP Pre-Cal is being talked about. It's designed for students to test out of math.
10 seconds.
How much on?
10.
Sorry, 10 seconds? Okay. AP Pre-Cal is designed to teach out of test out of a math elective in college. Our AP Calc students are testing out of a low-level math class. I don't understand that. Why is that being designed to be taught to those students? I can go on and talk about that another time. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speakers are Rebecca Brown and Adrienne Breslin, who are going to talk tonight about Willow Lane crossing guards.
Hi, thank you for previously addressing this topic. The last board meeting that I attended, it was said that it would be brought up again in the December meeting, and I don't see it on the agenda. I'm not able to find any information online regarding what happened with the contract that was said to expire December 31st of this year. There's multiple children that walk these streets, and the crossing guards this summer, it was in the media and everything that they were going to be potentially removed. There was a request for volunteers, and I'd like to know what the board is planning to do with this. I'd also like to see that the contract be written for more than 6 months and end at maybe a school-to-school year calendar and not in the middle of the school year, and to make every attempt, if possible, for the school board to continue to put people in those places. Thank you.
I would like everyone on the board to think about if your child had to walk to school and if you had to cross a busy street, how you would feel about that if there were no crossing guards. So this is an important issue. These crossing guards are important, and parents, at least for Willow Lane, I'm sure with other schools too, we're very concerned about this. And we'd like to know how the board intends to act so we don't have to worry that our kids are safe walking to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. John Gallagher on removal of GP from EHS.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns. My name is John Gallagher. I'm speaking about the elimination of GP classes at Emmaus High School. It was exciting to be here last month and have several members of the board ask for a delay in the vote in order to, as one of you put it, get the teachers on board. Since last month, there has been exactly this many attempts to do that. 0. There were no attempts to show us data, no attempts to speak with us regarding the veracity of the data used to make this decision, the effectiveness of the change itself, or to see what we do in our classrooms that might be impacted by this change. None. If this is such a good idea for our students, then why haven't there been any attempts to demonstrate how this is so? Granted, there were some efforts, exactly 2 that I am aware of, to reach out to the 9th grade teachers at Emmaus High School to recruit some of those educators to implement this change. Please note the language that I used here, to implement this change. Not discuss the change, not to learn how it would help our students succeed, but how to implement an instructional design, some fine suspect, but was already decided upon. So a change was presented, the stakeholders that were impacted by this change, students, parents, teachers, were not consulted. But then we professional educators were asked to volunteer to give up our extracurricular or family time to figure out how to make this work. I ask, is that a viable design template, one guaranteed for successful implementation? Last month, several of you mentioned your affront at being sent correspondence specifically naming those in leadership involved in making these decisions. Personally, I agree with that point of view. I see that as ungentlemanly, not a productive way to begin a discussion or even a debate. But that's just me. On the other hand, for what I know of this decision and this decision only, to act using an authoritarian model of leadership, you also have to be ready to take responsibility and ownership for that decision too. That seems logical. Also last month, a few of you mentioned the desire to conduct a root cause analysis to determine why our test scores are failing or decreasing. That is a wonderful idea, but why are they? And has that been looked into? Has that root cause analysis been tried yet? And please allow me to finish with this. For several decades now, I have told the 150 plus students who sit in my classroom that a democratic republic's most valuable natural resource is an educated population. Addressing them, I say, that's why you're here. That's why you have to be here until you're 18, because you are our country's most valuable natural resource. Our students are this resource. Is this decision made this way going to help the students of East Penn School District live up to that? Will this change help them bear that responsibility? Some of us are not yet convinced that it will. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Aaron Gavin on program study.
My name is Aaron Gavin. I teach English at the high school. Administration sometimes describes the teachers in this district as the experts in the room, the implication being that we have the knowledge and practical experience to know what will be best for our students. While we teachers claim no monopoly on expertise, if administration does view us as the experts in the room, then the fact that the clear majority of their experts are not convinced detracking will help students should give everyone pause. But because we're teachers, we desperately want to always do better for our students. We want to be convinced of better ways to teach them. So then what would convince us a plan will help our students? A well-developed and implemented analysis to determine the root cause of our district's equity problems. No one debates that our district has equity issues that must be fixed, but we have little confidence that the root cause of those issues is well understood. A process that brings all stakeholders in at the beginning with no pre-decided plan. Clear and concrete proof that whatever plan is developed will actually address the root cause of our equity problems. On a side note, I did some research about where detracking has helped districts. It tends to be in districts where tracks are forced by test grades and other standardized tests, and where some teachers refuse to teach certain classes. Our district has neither of those characteristics. In the high school, track is an adjective, not a verb. Students choose their classes, test scores don't, and they move freely between tracks whenever they think it best for them. And teachers teach every student. A concrete, actionable guarantee that if a major change needs to occur, It will continue to be supported even after funding changes and administrators move on to other jobs. Every teacher in this district has experienced, more than once, what happens when this isn't the case. A demonstration that everyone understands an important academic value that GP classes fulfill and a practicable plan to help students that absolutely need the added supports a GP class offers. A program of study that can include on-level, non-honors courses that remain rigorous for students who plan to continue their education at top universities. A process that hears and values all stakeholders, including teachers. Saying we hear you and thank you for sharing your concerns isn't enough. Regarding the currently proposed plan, the majority of teacher concerns remain unaddressed. An idea that can be planned, developed, and constructed while still serving current students without breaking teachers. Pulling teachers from a classroom at a time when subs are scarce doesn't seem to be in the best interest of our current students. We believe the currently proposed plan lacks these necessary components as well as others. This wasn't an exhaustive list. Hopefully, though, this list gives a further sense of why most teachers in these departments remain unconvinced by the proposed plan. So, does administration mean it when they call us the experts in the room, or is that just a platitude? Because the experts in the rooms of Emmaus High School are not convinced the proposed
10
plan
seconds.
and the process that led to it will be good for the students. The decisions we make affect in deep and profound ways real students, parents, and teachers. This is not something you go into hoping for the best, especially when the experts are asking you not to. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Shannon Petrunik on Program of Study, Detracking.
Good evening. I've been teaching English for 18 years, and I appreciate this opportunity. You know, at the beginning of It's a Wonderful Life, 'tis the season, right? When the senior angel tells Clarence that a man down on earth needs his help, and Clarence asks, is he sick? And the senior angel responds, no, worse, he's discouraged. I can relate, and I'm not alone. When we discuss eliminating GP or any plan, the most important factor is the impact it'll have on students. It's true, and we all hold fervently to that. It's not, however, the only important factor. Detracking will impact teachers. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with colleagues that focus on how dispirited, overwhelmed, and alone we feel. Teaching may be our calling, but when new directives keep piling on, when we're asked to consider the trauma and emotional health of our students, but never seem to receive the same grace, when we are told that our voices matter, but aren't treated as such, it is not surprising. We are burnt out. But it didn't have to be this way. We could have used this year to get our feet under us, to shore up morale, to reconnect with students, each other, and ourselves. Like everyone, we just lived through a pandemic. We've given so much of ourselves to the district, and our tanks are empty. Our new principal's goal was to heal this staff without new initiatives, and it was working. Things felt different, actually better this year, until the bomb dropped in October, right after we finished writing exams for our new curriculum that will probably change. Now we're back to feeling like the trauma we've experienced is invalid. For too long, teachers' willingness to neglect their own needs has felt like a requirement in this profession, a profession in crisis. Pennsylvania teacher certs have declined by 66%, and educators are fleeing due to stress. On any given day, EHS has 8 to 12 teachers absent without substitutes, a problem that dumps hundreds of kids into study halls instead of learning. Just on Friday, 28 teachers were absent with just 9 subs to cover. That's 19 teachers whose lessons were not taught. Our students' education will suffer if we continue to feel like everything is done to us instead of with us. That being said, if we thought this plan would benefit kids, we would go with it. We would again give more than we have to give for the good of our students. I have yet to hear one teacher say that this proposal under consideration, at the very least with a suggested timeline, will help our students or our children. We are being told to do something that we don't believe in. And I understand if your immediate response is that you appreciate our concerns, but children are what matter most. I get it, I do. But is it in the best interest of kids to have teachers who are so discouraged that we're literally in tears during the school day and at meetings? We already feel overwhelmed and something's got to give. We need support, like George Bailey needed Clarence, so we can support our students. Please, for the good of our students, let's figure out a root cause of our district's equity issues and collaborate on a plan that lifts up everyone, teachers included. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Eric Luckenbill, ninth grade.
Good evening, Dr. Levinson, directors, and Dr. Campbell. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Eric Luckenbill. For the last 16 years, I've been honored to serve the East Penn School District in many roles, but most importantly as a high school social studies teacher. I can't express in words how privileged I am to have the opportunity to teach here. The halls of the North Wing are where I found my voice, my career, and the ability to support my family. I'm honored to be known as a passionate member of the Hornet family. Listening to the last few school board meetings have led me to do some thinking about my favorite people I get to teach, freshmen. I've taught ninth graders every single year of my career, by choice. I love it. Like me, freshmen are a little goofy. They laugh at bad jokes. They don't take themselves too seriously. But they're also inquisitive, passionate, hardworking, and friendly, even if they're addicted to their cell phones. For years, our district has done several studies to try to figure out what just isn't quite right about the freshman level. There was a discussion once about building a ninth grade center. We all remember the later school day times, which would be sweet. We've collected data throughout the years. About 5 years ago, we even created a ninth grade academy, which for a few years allowed teachers to teach some of the same kids, meet with each other, and kids to make sure students didn't slip through the cracks. But after a few years, that program fell through the cracks. Tonight, I'm asking you to hold off on the merging of the ninth grade CP and GP levels at social studies and English. I get that we need to do something, and we should, but I strongly believe that our next move for ninth graders needs to be carefully researched, planned, and executed. I also believe that this current proposal will do more to eliminate CP than to actually eliminate GP at the ninth grade level. Before we make a wholesale change like this that would remove student choice and have dramatic impacts, I propose we fight to take our culture back that we lost during the COVID years. Let's bring a joy back to our hallways. I believe that this culture change is well on our way under the leadership of our new principal. Let's start there and keep going. Let's help students navigate through this complicated world and promote the rigor of our high expectations, along with high support we provide at the levels that's best for them. Let's help teachers understand what inclusion should actually look like. Let's pick a schedule that works for kids and not just for our budget. Let's keep things the same for a few years so we can get really good at what we do so our students can thrive. Let's remind kids that keystones matter and are not just a disruption in the schedule and a test that has no impact on their lives. Our students at Emmaus High School are wonderful. They inspire me every day. They make me laugh, they make me a better person, and they force me to be my best. We owe freshmen more than being a test subject. We have the ability to come together as a school district to fight for these kids, and I look forward to being valued as a stakeholder and work with administration to best serve these Hornets. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Sarah Taylor on removal of GP.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Taylor. I'm a grandparent of 2 students in East Penn. I noticed on the agenda for this evening that the ninth grade detracking will be on the table, but there is no mention of any kinds of moderations that would be made towards that, and also no mention of how students such as Mrs. Bowen's son have been clarified and her concerns taken care of. I'm appalled that a proposal will be brought for a vote when all attempts by teachers, students, and the public to engage in meaningful discussions have been ignored or rejected by the administration and board president. Board members represent all stakeholders, not just the administration and select few. Your vote on this issue will tell everyone if your concern is truly for our students and teachers. Another issue I have is slide 7 of the Equitable Environment Board presentation from, I believe it was October 24th, is titled, "What Does a Student-Censored Classroom Look Like?" And it gives an example of a typical 80-minute period. The first 5 minutes are used to check for understanding or community building. The next 15 minutes for discussion and background building for new learning. 30 minutes is spent working on projects or an assignment, and the final 10 minutes, the teacher reinforces the point of lesson. That equals 60 minutes. 60 minutes of an 80-minute session. Only 20 minutes are left for introducing material. Only 20 minutes out of 80, or 25% of an entire block, is spent on new material. So out of 323 minutes of block classes per day, only 80 minutes of new material are given to our children. This makes it virtually impossible to bring a rigorous course of study when you combine students of all learning levels in one college prep class with a teacher, with any number of required support teachers, frankly, students who don't want to be there or have difficulties in that class. And yet, despite the harm that it may cause to so many students, you will do this through the almighty lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Frank Dumbleton on English and Social Studies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Frank Dumbleton. I live in Lower Macungie Township. I attended the board meeting on October 24th, and I listened to the board meeting on the November meeting. My interest in this subject is the focus of the 5 stakeholders involved in this decision. Stakeholder number 1, which should always be number 1, is the students. And at the November 3rd meeting, 3 very well-spoken students listed their concerns for the detracking. All 3 felt this change would not help the school's equity. One student had signatures of over 330 other students. They said this change is being done, and I quote, to fit the district's equity ratios or to make the district look good to the Department of Education. In contrast, the 3 students' concerns were their educational needs. All 3 felt that the program would not help in their education. Stakeholder number 2 is the parents. There has been limited parent comment in this discussion. In fact, the one parent that spoke was Mrs. Bowen at the October meeting. She expressed a concern about losing this program to meet the needs of children. Another parent expressed his concern in the difficulties this change causes in the classroom and for the teachers. Those changes might be more discipline and distractions. The parents' focus was on better education. Stakeholder number 3 is the teachers, and the teachers expressed their concern on how this plan would affect their classes and create extra challenges to teach. Several teachers listed that many needs that the GP track filled with all of their students that they had helped throughout the years. They also expressed their concern with no input in the plan, as they have tonight, and the mad rush to implement this change. Their concern was how this affects the education given at East Penn. So the first 3 stakeholders are all primarily concerned about improving the education at East Penn. Stakeholder number 4 is the administration. It seems like the administration's main focus is equity. We were shown the colorful figures in the PowerPoint, profiling the classes as if this was a reason to change. The administration has said all decisions in 2022 will filter through equity. Some stakeholders at the November meeting felt that this is being done at the expense of education. So tonight, the last stakeholder is you, is the board
10 seconds.
School board. We ask each school board member, what is your primary filter? What is the key that you focus on for East Penn? Your vote will be an indication. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next speaker is Ms. Hope Garavaglia on GP courses.
Good evening. My name is Hope Gravalia, and I would just like to start off by saying that I'm not usually the type of person to come in front of a crowd and speak. However, this for me was different. This is something that I felt needed to be spoken about, as it made me rather disappointed to find out about. GP level courses should not be taken away from students who learn at a slower pace. Why are we taking our district's lack of equality out on them by taking away their courses? These classes are beneficial to them as it provides them with criteria at a pace at which they are comfortable with. I find this as a very upsetting topic, mainly because my sister teaches up in Harrisburg, where a lot of her students come from low-income families or even are homeless. However, they have the option of specialized classes to make sure they are being educated at their levels. Now, say you were to take those options away, these students would be failing, as it is too fast of a pace for them, and they need the extra help from teachers, and that is perfectly okay. With all of this being said, not only are you affecting the students whom you are taking the GP courses from, you're also affecting the CP level students as well. GP students should not be forced to learn at a quicker pace, and CP students should not be forced to learn at a slower pace. Combining these classes will put teachers in a difficult position, as they may have students who are struggling with the learning process and the fast pace, but they may also have students that are way ahead of their classmates. Teachers can only differentiate so much and serve all students at the same time. In conclusion, it is not fair to GP or CP kids to take away the option of general placement classes. I understand that kids must be challenged when it comes to their education, but kids who have trouble learning new skills at faster paces are being challenged as it is. Thank you for your time and consideration. I feel it would be beneficial to look into this decision further, and we need to realize that by solving the real problems at EHS, you can make the school actually better. And I know this was not the most formal speech of the night, but I sure hope that it has the same impact as any of the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker tonight is Ms. Cyan Kavaki on GP classes.
Good evening, members of the board, our administration, and all of the people gathered here to express support for what they believe in. I've spoken, I've emailed the school board twice, and I've emailed our administration. I am tired of over and over again presenting why eliminating GP classes is a bad decision for our school district. The public has spoken, our teachers have spoken, the students have spoken, I have spoken. If you recall, last meeting there was a petition with over 300 signatures from students to keep GP classes in place. 300 kids went out of their way to give their support to this cause. I was informed that my emails have been forwarded to the administration, that they received them, and that they were asked to meet with me individually. I have heard nothing. Like many others, I just want to know what the actual plan is to help future EHS students. Is there even a plan? I want to know what you're doing to students, what you're doing with students, not to them, and what everyone will have to pick during course selection, like my sister, who will be a freshman next year. Why can't we know what this will look like with our fairly new block schedule? The silence is deafening, and what this silence means to me is that you don't really know what we are going to do. That's scary, and as someone who aspires to become a teacher, I look at our administration with admiration, and I assume that before changing every student's education, they'd make an in-depth plan regarding exactly what's going to change and how you will implement it. I'm not convinced that we have a plan at all. As a student, standardized test scores mean absolutely nothing to me. I would never base anyone's intelligence on a Keystone score. Students have little reason to try their best, and therefore many do not. Last year during my biology Keystone, a senior slept through the entire test, and our district is making a knee-jerk decision based on scores that aren't an accurate representation of students or our teachers' performance. I was hoping after hearing that the administration had received my emails that they would reach out to me. I'm an interested student and eager to learn. I would love data and hardcore evidence that backs this plan up. When I went to email the board with more questions, as I am a curious member of this district, I was disheartened to know that the administration disabled my ability to email the school board at all. In layman's terms, they blocked me. Luckily, I have a personal email that I was willing to use, but it was an eye-opener to what student voice means in the school district. I've been incredibly lucky to have so many amazing human beings as teachers throughout my time here at East Penn School District. I thoroughly believe that they know what they're talking about. I hope tonight we all hear them out as they have amazing and valuable points of view. I will say it today, and I will say it 10 more times if I have to. This would be a mistake. Thank you for hearing me out tonight. A special thank you to all of the board members who dedicate their time for the good of students. Hope you all hear what I and many others are trying to explain to you. Hope you all have a wonderful holidays with your family. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our request to address the board. Moving on our agenda, we're on to minutes. There are two sets of minutes to approve. First set is for the minutes from November 14th. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Bowen?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next is to approve the minutes from the December 5th meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved. Moved. Second.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. The next item on the agenda is the district update from Dr. Campbell.
Good evening. I will start off, and as Dr. Levinson emphasized, the public comment section is not typically interactive. And so, as always, I always like to say that I certainly appreciate our community members who come out to share their perspectives with us. I did, in particular, just for the record, want to respond to the two individuals who came and spoke about the crossing guards at Willow Lane, because I can certainly appreciate that there were concerns about whether or not those individuals would be there once our current cost-sharing agreement with the township expires at the end of December. So I just wanted to clarify again for the public that the district, the school board, has taken action at the start of the school year, and the crossing guards that we have to support our Willow Lane crosser student walkers are district employees, and so they will remain there throughout the school year as employees of the school district. And what expires at the end of December, again, is actually a cost-sharing agreement between the district and the township. And certainly, while that agreement expires at the end of December, we've been in communication with the township, and once they have taken formal action on their budget, I anticipate that we'll hear in terms of next steps of how that cost-sharing agreement might continue for the second half of the school year. So again, just wanted to verify that, yes, indeed, our crossing guards will continue with us. As I get into my update for tonight, I just wanted to start off with some celebrations, and some of these have been mentioned already by Maddie, so I'll be quick in going over some of them. But I just wanted to say that as always, we're incredibly proud of our students, particularly how they continue to reach out and support the community, particularly through the holiday season. Our season began back in November when students from 3 buildings, Emmaus High School, Ayer, and Lower Macungie Middle School, helped us to host our senior citizens Thanksgiving meal. And a special thank you goes out to our food service team who helped to prepare the meal, our student musicians who performed at all 3 venues, as well as our National Honor Society and National Junior Honor Society students who helped us to serve our seniors. On November 23rd, many of our buildings started the Thanksgiving holiday with themed events in their building. Lower Macungie Middle School enjoyed their annual turkey trot. Ayer students ran the Rooster Ramble, and our Wescosville students hosted a Sphero Parade, which was a great way to kick off the winter holiday season. Speaking of winter holidays, I also want to thank our Emmaus High School students and advisors for Habitat for Humanity. They recently sponsored a gingerbread making contest that was really enjoyable to judge, and a tough judge as well. I also want to recognize Wescosville Elementary School teacher Bonnie Bosco. She and several students at Wescosville Elementary recently decorated a tree at the Lehigh Valley International Airport as part of their annual holiday festival of trees. And so that tree is located in the main terminal, and the artwork that's on the tree was created by our kindergarten through 5th grade art students. And so if you have a chance, you can check that out through the end of December. Our community education program, as we look to move ahead now, for the spring, we are reinventing or redesigning the traditional model, and new this spring, our classes will focus around our senior citizens. And so I encourage our seniors to please watch for more information regarding class topics and how our seniors might take advantage of those new learning opportunities. I'd also like to congratulate East Penn teachers who recently received an Education Foundation Innovator Grant Award. Throughout the past 2 weeks, members of the foundation and our administrative team enjoyed being able to visit teachers throughout the district who were awarded one of many STEAM grants. Particularly, congratulations to Alexa Byrne, who works at Lincoln and Jefferson, Judy Lingold from Macungie, Stacy Confer from Jefferson, Haley Schleicher from Wescosville, Karen Kao from Jefferson, Michelle Harned from Lower Macungie Middle School, Sean Boyle from Eyre, Vivian Feliciani from Eyre, and Nicole Gillen from Eyre, Brian Scholl from Lower Macungie Middle School, Jen Rivera and Dave Flannery from Wescosville, and Julianne Kale from Lower Macungie Middle School. Also, a special thanks to our foundation for continuing to support teachers in their creative ways in which they connect with kids and facilitate learning. Last week, we were able to recognize our East Penn Pride Award winners. Again, these are employees and staff members throughout the district who have been nominated by the school community and recognized for their outstanding leadership and work that they do for kids. Hopefully, you've seen our social media campaign on which we honored Linda Gitsky from Emmaus High School, Patrick Campbell from Lower Macungie Middle School, Ann Breidenbach from Eyre, Angie Hoffman, who works with our elementary VESPA program district-wide, Stacy Cusco from Willow Lane Elementary, Dylan Peters, who works really at all buildings throughout the district, and Allison Lind, who works at Macungie. Congratulations to those individuals. I'd also like to recognize Emmaus High School students who were recently honored by LCTI as being Students of the Month for the fall. Haley Cantor, Madison Krebs, Brielle DiGiacomo, Taylor Maurer, Olivia Maury, Gavin Nieves, Matt George, Jaden Singleton, Caleb Tran, Brielle DiGiacomo again, that's a repeat, I'm sorry, and Sam Mallets. Again, congratulations to those students who were LCTI Students of the Month. We're also very proud of two Emmaus High School students, Adam Plotka and Andrew Leitzel, who are candidates for special scholarship that are run through the National Merit Scholarship Program. You might remember we actually recognized those two individuals at an earlier board meeting. And finally, as Maddie announced as well, we are extremely thrilled this spring, late winter, spring, to be bringing back some special events to the East Penn School District that have not happened for several years because of COVID. One of those is our International Fair, which is scheduled for Saturday, February 25th in the high school cafeteria. We are looking for students, administration, faculty members, or community members who are interested in coming out and sharing information about your culture, and so please consider being a part of that event. I will also say please watch out for more information because this spring our East Penn Education Foundation will be bringing back its annual career fair as well, so more information will be coming out on those two special events. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Bowman?
The two women that brought up the issue of the crossing guards, I believe, left the room before you could update what was going on with that. And I'm just wondering if you can think people fill out their information on the form, if you could reach out afterwards so that they know what's going on. And I was also wondering if it might be worth it given if they were confused about what was happening, other people probably are too, if the administration would consider perhaps sending out a communication to Willow Lane families who have students who walk to school to ensure that they know our commitment to keeping the crossing guards in place, that there's no danger of the crossing guards going away. Basically everything that you just said, sorry. Much better than I just put it.
We absolutely can do that. Yep, we got you.
And like you said, public comment is not a give and take, but occasionally people come before the board that I think would need to have their views addressed by administration. And so I was hoping also that the other parent that came and mentioned information about the math curriculum seemed to have a lot of questions, and I was hoping that the administration would reach out to him as well. My last question was just about people being able to email the board and asking whether there's any blocks or not.
And I certainly will address that as well. In response to your question about when we do have community members, members of the public who come and have specific questions that come up as part of public comment, it is our standard practice that we would have a member of the admin team follow up just to have those conversations, and certainly we can do that. And I do appreciate the student who shared concerns about being able to email the board, and we did have communication about that particular concern. And we investigated the specific issue, and I will share that as part of, I'm going to look to our technology director, not to put him on the spot, but the way that our email system is set up, our student users at the district do not have the ability to email an entire group. So the student was able to email the school board from her personal email, but when she attempted to email the entire board as a group with her student email account, she received an error message that she was not able to do that. Similarly, a student using their East Penn email account would not be able to email like an entire faculty group. So there is no action, there was no blocking that happened. It really is the way the system is set up.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ensure that people are able to message board members as needed. Just because reaching out and making your views heard, whether it's here in public or individually to us or as a group to us, is very important. So I wanted to make sure that that was in place, and it sounds like
and
it is.
again, that restriction really is specific to student users on our East Penn network.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Constructive comments. Any additional comments? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is personnel. Before I call for a motion, I want to call to a couple items. First, there is a correction to the personnel agenda items exhibit. A clerical error occurred under item 8, support staff transfer of assignment. The correct effective date for Nancy Ardiaki is December 13th, 2022. Secondly, an addendum to the personnel agenda items exhibit was added and is publicly available. With that, I'll take a motion for personnel items.
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions, comments, concerns from the board? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item is business operations. If there are no objections, I'd like to take items A, B, C, and D together.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, concerns from the board? Ms. Bowman?
I just wanted to point out this amazing donation of $22,000 that the Albertus PTO raised for playground equipment. It's impressive. When I saw it on the agenda, I was blown away by it. Very thankful to the team of people who brought that about and were able to make that happen.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Anything else? I'm glad that you brought that up, Ms. Bowman. I also would like to commend the efforts of Albertus PTO to put in the work to make that donation to purchase equipment, and actually will also dovetail to recognize all PTO organizations amongst our schools who do so much to support the students' needs and the operations of their individual schools. Okay. Any additional questions? If not, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item is curriculum. We're going to take these items separately. I'd like to get a motion on item A on educational conferences.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Falegi,
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Whitney,
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen,
Aye.
Miss Bowman,
Aye.
Mr. Byrd,
Aye.
Mr. Champagne,
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Item B is to take from the table the detracking of ninth grade GP track from the Emmaus High School 2023-2024 program of studies. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, second. I thought it was appropriate for me to take it since I put it there, but anyway.
And I'll second, since I seconded it.
All right, appreciate working together on that one. Any questions or comments on that?
Just the procedure.
Okay, this is a procedural item. Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Jankowski,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Whitney,
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen,
Aye.
Miss Bowman,
Aye.
Mr. Byrd,
Aye.
Mr. Champagne,
Aye.
Mr. Falegi,
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Okay, the next item is item C, detracking of ninth grade GP track from the Emmaus High School 2023-2024 program of studies. To open discussion, may I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Campbell, would the administration like to say some opening words?
Sure, I certainly have some prepared information to share, and I'll say this really is, I'm going to say pulling together public discussion that has happened as well as additional work that has happened over the past really 6 weeks. And so the proposal or the motion that's being considered tonight is the gradual elimination of the GP track in English and Social Studies, beginning with grade 9 next year and rolling up in successive years. As I stated, over the past 6 weeks, our team has shared multiple presentations through the board meetings that focused on the rationale for the change, and I'm just going to summarize some of the key information tonight for the public. Specifically, when we think about the what, as we indicated based on data, when we look at both qualitative data, quantitative data, the proposal is to phase out the GP track in English and Social Studies at Emmaus High School. And then also based on data in terms of student performance, we recognize that there are students who will need and we would like to offer them an English lab course in addition to their on-level English class that they would have. When we think about the why, certainly I appreciate in the public comment tonight that several community members and staff members have reiterated the why for the proposed change. Specifically, we're focusing on strong core instruction. A component of that is having consistent and strong expectations for all learners in our classrooms. We'd like to provide increased support for students, and so we recognize that there are students who, in addition to their on-level class, that they will need that additional support through a lab class that we'd like to offer. One component, again, of several that I've mentioned, is proficiency on a Keystone exam, and I actually agree with our students who highlighted the fact that performance on a single exam does not give us the full profile of a student's performance. We recognize there are many pieces. However, we simply mention Keystone exams. I shouldn't say simply, but we do mention Keystone exams because, as we all know, that is now a component of a state graduation requirement. So it is certainly something to which we have an accountability for our students and to the state. And finally, we're looking at growth and learning of our students. And again, we've talked about different measures that we have that tell us how our students in various tracks are growing. So in addition to the why, I just want to quickly summarize the when. As indicated, we're proposing that the change begin in the 23-24 school year with grade 9 and then rolled up in successive years. The approach provides continuity in terms of the instructional models with which our students are familiar and have experienced as they transition from 8th to 9th grade. Just as a reminder for everyone, beginning in 7th grade in English and Social Studies in the East Penn School District, we have an on-level course, and then we also have an honors course in both of those content areas. We believe this phased-in approach allows us to provide, it's most consistent for students in terms of there are not currently any students who are taking GP who would then not have that opportunity next year. So again, first, we're certainly approaching the change by looking at students. Secondly, we also recognize that a phased-in approach allows us to provide targeted coaching and support to our teachers as they implement the change. We also recognize, as we have worked through the change process or the proposal, there certainly have been consistent or questions, themes that have come about in terms of concerns. One of those concerns is how or if the proposed change will impact our inclusion and our special education students. Again, we recognize that there are some special education students who will continue to receive their instruction in a pull-out setting, just as they have access to now based on their IEP goals and the determination of the IEP team. We also recognize that there will be some students who will appropriately be included in an on-level class with the appropriate supports and services. There was questions about whether the proposed change would negatively impact on-level or high-achieving students in a class, and certainly this whole notion of rigor has been a robust conversation, and we reference research that has been done in terms of the impact of detracking in other school districts, as well as in professional research and having high expectations for all students. Again, it was not found to be an impact on those on-level or above-level students. There was also, certainly we appreciated the hearty discussion that we had about teachers' desire to be involved in planning for the change, and we absolutely have said that we want and need and very much have planned for teachers to be a part of the change with us. We recognize that we need teacher involvement, and I'm appreciative of the department chairs in English, Social Studies, and Special Education, as well as some of their colleagues from those departments who have met with us over the past several weeks to provide input to the change, specifically since our last meeting in November. In particular, building administration and a member of our district administration team met with those departments that I just mentioned, offered 4 different occasions specifically to begin to look at the proposed professional development plan and hear feedback in terms of what and how and what the priorities are moving forward. When we talked about the plan for the proposed change, our team has developed really a project planning document that allows us to outline the key benchmarks in terms of the change process, including developing those core teams in each grade level that would be composed of regular and special ed teachers, recognizing the importance of the 8th to 9th grade transition process. We have rubrics that have been developed, as well as flow charts to help 8th grade teachers as well as our counselors appropriately help students make those appropriate placement decisions as they move from 8th to 9th grade. And then certainly a critical piece of our planning document has focused on professional development. And so we do have a proposal for a PD plan in working with both the English as well as social studies departments. Some of the key hallmarks of that planning includes a review of common assessments, differentiation in an instructional block, addressing student behaviors, and then again, a continued focus on co-teaching and inclusionary practices. We certainly are flexible in when this professional development can continue to happen, and are certainly open and willing to hearing from teachers what works best. We appreciate that during the school day, there might be some who say it's hard to get subs and the additional planning is not necessarily what's best for kids. We're willing to work with teachers and compensate them outside of the school day if that works for them. And then we also recognize summer opportunities as well for that collaborative work to continue. I will also say we recognize that we are willing to be flexible in terms of the professional development expectations that we have already planned for this spring. And certainly if we need to make adjustments, we can do that as well. And then finally, as we think about why implementing the change for the upcoming school year and not delay implementation for a future period of time, certainly we give consideration to data that we have over the course of several years in terms of how our students are performing. And I will say certainly feel a sense of urgency in terms of, and I don't mean rush, but a sense of urgency in terms of appropriately challenging all students. We also recognize, and we've discussed this before, we do have ESSER funds that will continue through next school year that allow us the ability to maintain instructional coaches. And again, we recognize that a critical part of the plan will be supporting teachers so that they can be most effective in terms of meeting the needs of students through the change process. And so we know that we will have that staffing available for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. And I'd like to open up questions, comments from the board. Dr. Whitney?
Yeah, so you mentioned the multiple occasions that you met with department chairs and teachers, ninth grade team, to talk about the professional development plan. I wonder if you could share, just kind of at a high level, what the feedback was and how the professional development plan has changed or not based on that feedback.
Yes, I will share that we, as part of the PD plan, and I was able to sit in just really as a participant and to listen to those discussions. I was able to sit in the most recent two meetings. We outlined a time frame starting in January and going through the end of the year and continuing through the summer in terms of the professional development priorities. The question really was, as you look at the professional development, which of those is most important or would you prioritize as teachers? And then the other feedback that we heard is that teachers, there were some departments that preferred not to have a substitute during the day. There were some who said, I don't know that I necessarily want to do the work after school. And so again, we recognize that professional development is critical and are certainly willing to look at different options in terms of how we can make that available. In terms of feedback that we heard from, and again, I'm offering this from the session that I was a part of, when asked, well, what are the priorities? As you look at the professional development priorities that we identified, which is seen as most important in the session that I was a part of today, one of the PD needs that was seen as having greatest priority is working with diverse behaviors that we see in classrooms.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, one of the comments that came up tonight was asking about whether this was carefully researched, and I'm wondering if your team can talk about how long you've been thinking about this and what led to this suggestion to the board.
I will say that the research really goes back to several years ago, and for us in East Penn, you might recall that in 2017, working into the 2018 school year, we made adjustments to our science curriculum. And I'm just really mindful about feedback that we've received in the past. And so, I just bring up that the change that was made specific with the science curriculum is the phasing out of GP in the biology class And there were curriculum changes in terms of the GSI course was created. And that was a change that took place, I'm going to say in a relatively short period of time, but there was certainly research at the time in terms of the impact of tracking at high school levels. And that has certainly continued then over the course of several years. So this is not, from a research perspective, this is not an idea that has come up just this fall.
Yes, okay.
And I'll certainly defer to members of my team if there's anything else that perhaps I didn't say to address the question, but also don't want to put them on the spot, so.
I'm not sure if, well, I'm not sure, I don't want to try to read the mind of the person who brought this up, but, so I'll speak personally that when I think of research, I think I was thinking of something different. That said, you know, after you brought this before the board the first time, I did do a pretty deep dive into published research on detracking and found out, I mean, there's studies going back 20 years on this. It's not a new, absolutely not a new topic. You know, that information wasn't brought before the board or for the public, but I do think it's helpful for people to know that it's out there, especially with detracking and academic success. And it was that research that I did on my own that changed my mind. I'll get into that in a second. I do have a completely unrelated question, though. A different speaker brought up, actually many different speakers brought up issues with burnout and culture, which, and I can understand why these two things would seem related. But to me, I feel like that's a separate issue. And what I would like to hear, I think, from our administration is if that's something that is a problem at our high school level, that we would take a look at that and work collaboratively with our educators to look for ways to solve for that. People, I can't remember if I'm quoting the person who spoke correctly or not, mentioned people crying in the break room and things like that. If that's what our work culture is like, that's not going to be good for our students, regardless of whether we make this change. That's the current culture. So I would hope that our administration can work collaboratively, listen, have meetings with our educators to find out specifically what it is that's creating that problem, regardless of detracking, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to speak personally about, I mentioned that it was the research that I did that changed my mind. I also spoke with an educator from Building 21 where they have no tracks and asked what that was like for her. And she actually, I can't summarize that whole conversation, but she had many different ways to reach all of the students in her classroom, even though they are all at differing levels of ability. And as I've mentioned to the administration outside of this room, you know, my father was in a one-room schoolhouse for up through 8th grade. So there were no tracks and no grades in that class. Everybody was in the one room together. And those students, they succeeded. There was a special needs student in that school that they've all stayed friends with for life, and they all look out for that gentleman. I don't know if that would have happened if they hadn't all learned together and helped each other and tutored each other. So we have precedent for, I'm not saying we should mix all of our grades together. I'm not saying we should get rid of all of our tracks like Building 21 has done. But these models have worked. In the past, we have historical precedent for these models working, which is why I believe it can work here. The main thing that, and the main research point that convinced me was the reams of research now that we have on mindset. And knowing that when kids are told that they can't achieve, or that when the adults in their life have low expectations of them, that the students themselves have low expectations of themselves. This is a solution to that. It might not be the only solution, but it's one solution. It's a structural solution. Unfortunately, as I sit here listening to comments, sadly, I can hear the low expectations in the comments, and that makes me sad. We have students who are being left behind in our schools, and the reason I wanted to be on the board was to do something about that. I'm hoping that this change does, but we cannot give up on groups of students, ever. Even if it's difficult, we have to keep trying to reach them. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Additional comments? Mr. Byrd?
Excuse my voice, but I have a comment. I guess the way I looked at this, I look at a global view of the situation. I look at also the added value of what this will do to the district and the students in our community. I guess when I look at it, we will get growth. We'll get some better proficiency in our students. Students will be challenged to perform better. I think we'll end up with a greater mindset of our students. Also, our teachers will be challenged. They will grow also at the same time. That is a good thing. That would add value to our district, our community, and our country. If I look at the future, which is very important, not only to the students, the parents, teachers, and the district. What's happening in our world, the global world, which I take a global view and not a local view, is that the world is changing. One of the things that's changing in our world that communications and writing and English and social studies are very important. What's happening out there, there are careers that are available for kids who don't go to college, but they need these highly leveled teaching and highly leveled skills. And the only way to get that is in high school. And we can do that in this district. There are many jobs available, career jobs. They require a high level of English, writing, communications. That's why I believe this is a good thing to do. It's the future of our students, the future of our country. And I've been on the receiving end of this situation where the students were not ready, could not communicate. And that is not good. We're doing a disservice to our students, disservice to our parents, disservice to the district and our community. Don't provide that facilities for our kids. Challenge our kids, challenge our teachers, challenge our district, challenge everyone to do a better job and make the kids better students, better citizens. And I guess what I look at too, I came from a school, segregated schools, no tracking. I succeeded in the corporate world. Many of our students that went to school became CEOs of corporations. We had one track. Very successful kids, students, because we were pushed, we were challenged. And our other fellow students helped each other. People who could not work together, not work or had some limitations, everybody pulled together to help each other raise to the top. That's what would happen if this is done. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Additional questions? Mr. Flakey?
Yeah, I just basically have a comment to make here. This has been going on for a while, as everybody's aware. We've been reached out by parents, students, the public. I have been listening. I've been listening intently. I thought about this a lot. Basically, for me, it will be a no. You out there have voted me in. I haven't heard one person except admin come to me saying this is a good idea or a change. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that's the route I'll be taking based on those that put me in the seat. So thank you.
Mr. Champagne?
Yes, I too have been listening. I also have been doing research, as Ms. Bowman, has suggested that she did, and looked at not only what the studies have said, but also just some practical things that I've seen in my time on the board where I think, this change can do a number of the things that Mr. Byrd also illuminated, which is to challenge students across the board. I've seen this work in a setting that I would not even think that is possible for it to work, and that is up at LCTI. A lot of those kids come from different backgrounds, and they're thrown into a situation where, they are all on level, where they go through their technical training. And, they, as Mr. Byrd illuminated, they sit down and they help each other. They bring each other together. They bring the students along that are less likely to succeed. And in the end, you've got a bunch of kids who are very successful in what they're able to do and the skill sets that they have learned. And they have shown that by the kind of jobs that they're able to successfully go out and get. But to do that, they have to have the skill sets that are necessary in math, in social studies, in language arts. And I think this district is all about trying to do best for kids. Sometimes changes don't work as the way we expect them. Sometimes they work better. But to continue to repeat the same process without any additional success, is not what I think we need to be doing here. We are behind the curve, and we are looking to move forward, and I support this change that the administration has proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne. Mr. Jankowski.
As with my colleagues, I appreciate everyone's input and perspective. Change is not always easy or welcome. This change is a pretty substantial change. And I'm not discounting that it can't be successful, but where I have concerns is doing it next year. My preference would be to take time, focus on 24, 25 as a potential for rolling it out if it's deemed to be something that could work. A lot of the work that's been, and I said this at the last meeting, a lot of the work that's been discussed that needs to get done to get this ramped up by next school year, in my opinion, is work that should be done well in advance to make sure that it's going to succeed. I have a lot of concern about starting a program and not being prepared and not having the buy-in wholesale to make it a successful program. And I think that is critically important, that this is done the right way if it's able to be done. For that reason, I'm not in favor of voting for this today. I don't think we're ready today. I don't think that we're going to be ready in September. I'd like to see more time taken to make sure that we're ready to hit the ground running in the right way. I appreciate the work that the administration's done, but I have a lot of concerns with rushing this for the next school year.
Thank you, Mr. Jankowski. Anyone else?
There's one really critical piece of data or information here that I feel like I'm missing that would really help me understand the effect of this. And I don't know if we have this information, but there's references to, and I'm talking to you now about the special education piece, and the number of students with IEPs who would or wouldn't be included in the on-level courses here. What I'm seeing now are statements to the effect that they'll be included as appropriate, and I know that that's the appropriate way to phrase it, but I don't want to be sitting here a year from now in a reality where a significant percentage of students with IEPs have been pulled out, more than exists now, because we've gone to this 2-track model rather than a 3-track model. And I guess I have to ask, is there any even baseline sense of what the effect would be and how many students with IEPs might not be integrated in the classroom with other students as a result of this change? Do we have anything?
Yeah, I will, and I appreciate some others on the team stepping in, but I will say we anticipate that those students who are currently pulled out and are not included in a GP, CP, or other section, that same number of students would remain as pull-out students, meaning they're receiving a replacement curriculum as part of their IEP.
I believe after the initial meeting where we discussed special education, I shared with the board an example of our current enrollment in ninth grade English and ninth grade science. So whether they were enrolled in biology or GSI, it's a difference of one student who, for whatever reason, was pushed in versus the replacement curriculum that the students are in respective to our programs that require replacement curriculum. So that would include autistic support, functional learning support, at those grade levels.
Okay, thank you. I guess just one more comment and kind of echo what a couple other board members have said here, but kind of regardless of this vote tonight and regardless of how this goes, it seems really apparent to me that there are culture issues that need to be addressed. I think one being the work culture of faculty, if indeed this level of burnout is real, and it's real across all industries. It's real everywhere. That's not a surprise, but of course it's more acute with a lot of educators. But if that's the culture that we're functioning under here, something has to be done to address that, and I trust that there are things being done to address that, but perhaps more needs to be done. But the real culture shift, in my mind, is this culture of low expectations, and this idea, which seems to not blossom at the ninth grade level, but seems to exist throughout the East Penn educational experience, this idea that some students just can't hack it, and therefore, there should be a place for them, rather than challenging them, rather than trying to push them forward, and rather than, as many of my colleagues have pointed out, trying to create an environment where students of differing abilities have to interact with one another, they have to see different learning styles, they have to help one another, and I think the more that we can do that is only for the good of our students, and we just can't progress as a district if we don't get to a place where our students, all of our students, believe that they can exceed beyond the levels that they might otherwise, think they can. So I think there's a real culture change that has to take place on the lower grades. I don't know what that is. I don't know enough information about what happens there. But if we're seeing a situation, if we're having to address a situation in high school where there's such a disparate track going on, that has to be addressed as part of the school environment. I don't know how to do that, but it seems to me like that's very important work that has to be done. That's all I'll say about that.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Any additional comments? Okay, well, I'd just like to express my opinion on where we stand. These past 6 or 7 weeks where we've been talking about this very important issue has touched on many subjects. We've talked about the need for better equity in our educational system. We've talked about the need for improving how we deliver material. And, our administration has presented all kinds of scenarios and data that have, tried to impress the point that there are positive aspects to improving equity and diversity in our educational experience. There have been a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas that have been presented, or incremental ideas, in order to look at where we stand in terms of math and English and science, and things that we've been implementing for the last last few years or things that we're looking to implement this year and moving forward that can all incrementally make an impact on student performance and student experience and school culture. One thing that's apparent is that there is a diversity of opinion in terms of each of the things that we've talked about, and I agree with one of the commenters that there are 5 major groups of stakeholders working here, and certainly the students, certainly the teachers, certainly the administration, certainly the parents in the community, and certainly us as a board. We all are looking at things a little bit differently, and there's a significant degree of difference in what we're choosing to emphasize. I've listened to everybody's comments and read every email and thought about everything that's been presented. I have to say that there's certainly a lot of credibility to each of these viewpoints. If we think about what the administration has presented, I think that that they have gone on, as Ms. Bowman had mentioned, that there's at least a couple decades of research where this works. But at the same moment, we can pull out various anecdotal situations where T-tracking has been implemented, hasn't gone as planned, or the growing pains in implementation were significant. And so, knowing that those kinds of things happen do provide an opportunity for lessons learned. I do think that it's right for teachers and students and parents to express their concern. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of moving forward. And we need to ask questions. We need to hold decision makers and people who are overseeing the implementation accountable, and have them demonstrate that they've been thought about, that there are good ideas to make something work. So if nothing else, these last 6 or 7 weeks, I think, have really heightened the conversation about this particular change. When I first heard the change, I was taken aback of trying to do this all at once in the high school. I thought that would be a monumental task to do all 4 grades at once. Again, given the thinking and the pushback that came on there, I thought that the idea of doing a slow roll and starting with 9th grade was a meaningful compromise for implementing this idea. I think it should not be lost on those that are looking at this, that the 8th graders coming into 9th grade know no difference in terms of the levels. There's on-level and honors in 8th grade, and so by moving forward into a system where they still have that, they still see that. I think it's good that we have students right now who are used to having the 3 levels, who are given the opportunity to finish their high school career under that model, because that's what they're used to, and that's what's at least for now working for them. I mentioned before that there's a diversity of thought, diversity of opinion in terms of how to look at this. So obviously, there are a lot of vocal and passionate people out there who've spoken, and again, I'm grateful for all that conversation and points that have made there, because this has really helped strengthen the way we're looking at this. But there are people out there who recognize that this could be a positive thing, and that goes across, again, all the stakeholders that are there: the students, the teachers, the parents, the administration, and the board. It's been a difficult 6-7 weeks thinking about this, and I knew this vote was coming. Again, I feel like that the middle ground here is to initiate or try this idea, which again is part of a multi-pronged approach with a lot of very good ideas to help boost performance of the students. And not just for standardized tests. Like many of my colleagues mentioned, I'm not a big fan of standardized tests or think that's something that defines any individual. But as Mr. Bird alluded to, our students are learning skills and are learning the confidence that's necessary to be successful in life. And programming in some additional challenge and hopefully having people who are also on board and see this and see the value and work hard to make it work, I think is going to be key to this success. So I do feel that there are people involved in this whole process that do see this as a positive thing. I'm hoping those are the people that are going to help make this a success. And again, by starting smaller, I think we're going to learn a lot. And if there's one thing I've learned since being on the board, the people in this district are flexible, and if they do or do not see something working, they make adjustments. So, I'm willing to let this go through, and my vote is going to be a yes. I'm not sure where the board stands on all this, but again, that's my opinion. And I value the conversation that's taken place, and I admire many, or just about everyone who took the time to reach out and speak so articulately about what's going on. Any additional comments? If not, Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowen?
No.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Byrd?
Aye.
Mr. Champagne?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
No.
Mr. Jankowski?
No.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
6 ayes, 3 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Our next item on the agenda is on other educational entities. With that, I'd like to ask Dr. Whitney to please give us a report from the last meeting at the CLIU.
Certainly, CLIU board met on November 21st. Just a couple of updates from what was otherwise a fairly standard agenda. The search process for the next executive director of CLIU is beginning, really in earnest next month. I will be representing on that search committee along with board members from the Parkland, Palmerton, and Whitehall districts. So we will be starting the process in January, I think, when we post the position, and then I will probably come back and announce that and ask for any interested applicants or references to apply. And I'll be, of course, updating the district as we go through as is appropriate to do so. But we have about a 7-month timeline to secure that next executive director before Dr. Ibe's retirement in mid-August. So we have our work cut out for us, but it's an exciting task ahead. Just a quick personnel note from the last meeting. The CLIU has hired, as the board approved, 4 new full-time social workers to help assist districts with their school-based mental health initiatives, which is a very positive development, certainly needed. Those positions are funded through COVID funds, not at any additional cost to the districts. And then finally, the preliminary general operating budget for fiscal year '24 was approved. The final budget is yet to be approved, and of course, it will come before this board, each district's board, in January. But as of now, there will be no additional contributions being asked from the districts. As a total number, the district contributions will remain the same, and the preliminary numbers, it looks like East Penn's contribution might actually decline slightly. But again, that final operating budget has not yet been approved. That'll be approved at the December meeting, but that's where it looks right now. But they are committed, as they have been many years, to not increasing the cost input from the districts. And that is the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Are any questions or comments for Dr. Whitney? Okay, thank you. We now have a report on LCTI. Mr. Champagne.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Levinson. The LCTI Joint Operating Committee met on November 21st as a committee of the whole. We heard from the independent auditor, Herbine and Company. They provided their 21-22 audit results. They provided a clean, unmodified opinion. It's LCTI's 30th consecutive year with a clean, unmodified opinion. They also reported that there were no material weaknesses identified, and that's the 33rd consecutive year that has happened. The review of the financial statements as well as the federal awards, which are the Perkin grants, identified no internal control deficiencies. We also got a preview of the 23-24 general operating and academic center budgets. Some highlights from that. Both budgets are balanced at the current point in time. The overall budget for the general operating budget for the 23-24 school year did show an increase of 4.6% over the 22-23 budget. Key drivers in that are salary increases, which are contractually obligated to happen. Some new positions, especially in the areas of emergency services, EMT health program. There's a teacher addition as well for some of the special needs students, as well as partially covering certain costs from communities and schools, the social worker there. In addition, there were benefit increases, that amounted to a little over 5.6%. Key drivers there were increases in health costs, dental care. PSERS also has gone up, though the final rate is not known until this December, as well as purchase services and equipment, which showed a dramatic increase over some previous years when none of that equipment had been bought because of the COVID-related periods. The impact to East Penn on the general operating budget, we will see an increase of about 7%, or about $195,000 for the current year. And this is not only driven by what was increased in the general budget, but also the number of attendees that East Penn sends to LCTI, which has increased, as well as the market values for the capital and debt service. The academic center showed an increase of a little over 7%. Again, the same kind of drivers. East Penn's share of that will increase by about 13%, again, driven by the number of students we're sending there. So it's not just the cost increase, but it's also by the participation by students coming from this district. And then finally, there was a ceremony held on the 7th of December, the National Technical Honor Society inductees. There were 25 students from LCTI that were inducted into the National Technical Honor Society. 2 East Penn students, Taliesin France, who is in criminal justice, and Ella Trexler in commercial baking. And that is my report.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne. Any questions or comments for Mr. Champagne? All right, seeing none. There are no other items. There are some announcements. First announcement is we did hold an executive session this evening where we talked about confidential matters, negotiations, personnel, and real estate. An announcement that the district will be closed for winter break starting Friday, December 23rd through Monday, January 2nd, 2023. Our next regular board meeting is going to be on Monday, January 9th. And with that, no further business, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting adjourned.